Hi everyone, and thanks for checking out this video in which I'll try and explain how I EQ Kemper profiles or rigs for live use direct to PA. So just before we get started, I'd just like to quickly say that the things I mentioned in this video work really well for me, but what constitutes a good guitar sound is a hugely subjective thing, and what sounds good to me may not necessarily sound good to you. So, having got that disclaimer out of the way, let's crack on. So, for playing live, direct to PA, my setup is as follows. Guitar straight into the Kemper, and then I have the main output set to master mono, and I take an XLR from either the left or right main output of the Kemper to the PA. I also have the monitor output set to master mono, and I take a mono 1/4 inch jack from the monitor out of the Kemper to my onstage monitor, which for a little while now has been a Yamaha DXR10, and on the DXR10 I use the line in input. So the first question is, why do we need to EQ profiles for live use direct to PA? Shouldn't they really just sound good through a PA by default? Well, some of you may think they do, and that's absolutely fine, but my experience is that the vast majority of the profiles that I've purchased, including those from the big name profilers, they seem to be EQ'd to sound good through studio monitors or maybe headphones, at studio volume levels, but when you play them through a sizable PA at gig volume, the majority of those profiles sound, to my ears anyway, way too bright, and some of the mid-range is lost, which tends to make them sound fairly thin and harsh. So why do they sound good at low volume and not so good at gig volume? Well, I think the main reason is due to what's called the Fletcher-Munson effect, which I'm sure some of you are probably already aware of, but what it basically means is that as the overall volume level is increased, the human ear perceives that some frequencies, particularly those around the 3 kHz area, will appear to be increased disproportionately more than other frequencies. And 3 kHz in guitar speak basically means treble. So any profile that sounds good at kind of home studio volume level will almost certainly sound more trebly at gig volume due to the Fletcher-Munson effect. Now some of you might be saying, well, why can't I just use the profiles I normally use at home and rely on the sound engineer at a gig to EQ my sound so it sounds good coming through the PA? And the answer to that is, yeah, if you've always got a great sound engineer who knows what they're doing, that is a perfect solution. But not everybody's in that situation. Some people get to use different PAs with different sound engineers on any given night. So my solution is to come up with a series of profiles which will sound good through hopefully most PA systems, and all they really require is for the channel which the guitar is going through on the PA desk to have all the EQ set flat. So I'll now try and outline how I EQ my profiles to be used live direct to PA. And to demonstrate this, I'll use this Marshall Super Lead profile from Bert Merlandike's Rock Rhythm Pack. And I should probably just mention at this point that this particular pack is still available from Bert's website for €6.95. Now, based on a comment I saw on Bert's website, I believe in the global or master EQ section of the Kemper, he sets the low cut to around 80 Hz and the high cut to around 8 kHz. So let's hear how this profile sounds straight out of the box with those global EQ settings. Now, if this rock rhythm guitar part is mixed within a track containing bass, drums, etc., and played at home studio volume or maybe through some decent headphones, it sounds okay. But when I first played this actual profile with those master EQ settings at gig volume through a PA, it sounded really brittle and harsh, and it had hardly any mid-range depth or punch. So the first thing I did was to change the global high cut to around 5 kHz to more or less mimic the top end frequency response of a typical guitar cab, and this is the first step to hopefully ensuring the guitar doesn't sound too harsh or brittle through the PA. Let's have a listen. So hopefully if you're listening on studio monitors or headphones, you can now hear that we've lost a bit of that slightly harsh top end. Now, before we go any further, I should probably just mention that the bridge pickup I mainly use for these kind of overdriven sounds has a bit of a hump in the upper mid frequencies. So please bear that in mind as I go through the rest of the EQ tweaks to this profile. So let's take a look at the EQ block for this profile. And as you can see, there's a boost at around 2 kHz and another one at 3.2 kHz. But as my guitars already have an upper mid hump, I don't really need those boosts. And also, because of the Fletcher-Munson effect we mentioned earlier, when using this profile at gig volume, the 3 kHz frequencies are being accentuated even more anyway. So for live use, I set both those two frequencies, the 2K and the 3K, down to 0. And I also changed the high cut from 9.3 kHz down to around 5 kHz, which to my ears smooths out any remaining raspy top end. Let's have a listen. So the final adjustment I've made to this profile for live use is to change the pure cab setting from 0 to 3. Now, according to Kemper, the pure cabinet feature identifies the typical harsh frequencies and treats them to a smooth and balanced sound that is similar to the sound of a pure amp in the room. Now, I've experimented with the pure cab quite a bit, and for me, the setting of 3.0 is about right for most overdriven sounds. Let's have a listen. So now that we've made a few EQ changes, let's now compare the original unadulterated profile to my modified one. So as you can hear, at home studio or typical headphone volume, the modified profile sounds quite dark with a slightly pronounced lower mid-range, but as mentioned earlier, at gig volume, our ears perceive the frequencies around 3K in particular to be louder than the mid-range frequencies. So this profile at gig volume, and again, to my ears at least, sounds really balanced. So that's it guys, thanks for watching, and I really hope you've found some of the info in this video really useful. Thanks very much. Cheers.